We don't have the updated presentation?
No,
I sent it at
Lynn just
12:05.
sent it to you. Right, but I can't connect it once. I didn't even see it, so it's not the one that's connected to the ID is not the updated presentation that she's sending you now. However, Julian has it, so it will be on your screen.
Okay, it's not the presentation that
I just sent the spreadsheet to you, Sheila.
Does Julian have it?
I do.
Yes.
Takia, I wonder if we made a mistake. Should we have adjourned the morning meeting or should we have suspended it? Because technically we're going back to pick up that morning meeting.
So you can adjourn it, that's fine. When you go to approve the agenda, you'll just have to amend the agenda to include.
So we'll approve the agenda for the afternoon meeting?
You'll amend it and then approve it as amended.
Okay, so I need to go to the 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock. All right, I wonder where Mr. Payone is.
He hasn't called.
Thank you. All right. So I'll call the Finance Committee meeting from April 22nd afternoon session to order. Alderwoman Finlayson and Alderman Arnett are present. Alderman Payone will join us presently. First order of agenda is to amend the agenda to pick up where we left off in the morning session with CIP and capital budget, and then we'll move on to community grants. And we have time, we will do finance. If not, we can reschedule that. So there a motion to approve the agenda as amended, please.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
I second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, there's no minutes to do so. At this time, I think we're ready to return to, and I got to get back into the other agenda, our agenda from the morning where we were doing the capital budget and the CIP review. And I believe we had left off with the general fund projects, and we were at Weems Whalen. And I have next on mine multi-space parking meter kiosks. Is that where we should be, Marcia?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we're all in the right place, I hope. I'm trying to find that. There it is. Okay. So does that mean that we're skipping over page 45, which has Hillman Garage?
Well, I'll defer to David. Is he on?
David is on.
I am on. Yeah, so Hillman Garage is the 50,000 that was approved last year. It's been moved to operating, and it's in the city manager budget for consultant support for that project. And I think it was 1.5 million that was going to be resiliency. Finance Authority has been taken out. So that was a negative in FY21 to remove that.
And that's because we're waiting till we deal with the RFPs and see where we're, what options we have for the garage.
Correct.
As Sheila, are you okay with that?
Yeah, but it looks as if we're taking out the 50,000 that we approved for 20 also.
Yeah, so that should have been an operating. There's not going to be any way to capitalize that money, the city, under the current plan. So that was just moved to operating. It was PAYGO money anyway. So
Okay.
it was moved to operating, and it's under the city manager budget.
Okay, so that's what reflected down below. It says PAYGO 50,000. Okay, I'm good.
All right, and you don't want to tantalize us anymore, David. I think I heard from you that responses are looking pretty intriguing.
I'll just leave it with that.
All right, thank you. All right, so
Funding from this from when I remember we passed that parking list at the very beginning to raise the parking near the water, I think up like $2 so that we could get funding to fund these projects. Is that where that money's coming from, or is this different?
this is different.
So what happens to the money that comes from the increase that we had for about $2 in I think it was like the parking, just right down by the water. It was like less than 5% of the parking.
That goes into the parking fund, if I'm right. Is that correct, Jody? So it's separate.
I'm sorry, will you repeat the question?
So the question was, we raised the rates for parking down on the city dock, and Juan is asking, where does that money go? That goes into the parking fund.
Correct. All parking fees go into the parking fund.
Right, so that's separate from the garage.
It is separate from this capital project garage. However, the parking fund manages the garage. The revenues go in, and those revenues help pay for the expenses of managing Hillman and the other garages.
Does that answer your question, Juan?
Thank you.
All right, so I think we're ready to go to slide 25, the parking kiosk.
Okay, so this project is to remove the existing parking meters that are basically at the end of their useful life anyway. I mean, they need to be replaced. So we're going to instead put in some multi-space meters. We're working with both transportation and SP Plus on getting these in. So it's a new project for FY21, and it's to put numerous kiosks in. So we're requesting funding of $131,250 from the parking fund.
So this was the project that I was referring to. When I popped up onto this Zoom, it was already on this slide. So I assumed that you guys were talking about this. Sorry about that.
Okay, this one's pretty simple. I guess, does anyone have any questions?
Alderman Gay, so the money goes into the parking fund, and the parking fund provides funding for things like this to replace parking meters as they become old. The single meter replaced with the multi-meters.
And these meters allow us to do dynamic pricing?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, hearing no more questions, we can move on.
Okay, and to go back one project that isn't shown on here, it is the landfill gas mitigation. I just want to give you a quick update. We're almost finished. That one has been in the budget forever. I just want you to know we're almost finished that. So anyway, that's some good news on that one. So this project is we're proposing a new organics processing recovery facility, and it would be to use yard waste and the biosludge from the wastewater treatment plant and partner with the county to build this facility. We're looking at public-private partnerships as to how to best do it. But the money we're requesting for FY21 is $625,250, and it is split between the sewer and the refuse funds. And that would allow us to get moving a little further on this. We already did we used some solid waste money when we were only looking at the yard trim, but now we realized that we really could save a lot of money between the city and the county from the wastewater organic waste. And we're hoping at some point to start a food waste program too. So does anyone have any questions?
I find this so exciting. We talked about it years ago. Some of the worries then were whether there would be problems with county residents and big trucks on their streets. I take it from something David said a while ago that we're working with the county and that's all ironed out. So this just seems like a big plus for the environment.
May I?
Go ahead.
What is the huge capital outlay for 2023?
So, go ahead.
You're talking 625,000 for 21, nothing for 22, and then 9 million for 23.
Yes, and that that number is going to most likely change because we're looking at other ways to do it so the city doesn't have to put all that money forward. Although I don't know, because part of the planning is we're going to figure all that out. We need to determine who our partnerships are going to be with and the best way to run it. We're looking at maybe having a public-private partnership to have somebody else run the whole thing, and then we would have an agreement to get the revenue. So. I think that's kind of a placeholder as to what we could spend, but we're thinking that it's going to be handled in a slightly different way.
Yeah, so Alderwoman Finlayson, so this initial money is for design and permitting, and that'll take some time because this is kind of a unique project. And then, so 2 years from now would be the construction money. And again, we hope to partner with the county, so we split the cost, and then we will split the revenues from the plant as well. But so this is planning and design and permitting, and then construction in a couple of years.
And then after the construction in 23, there's no cost?
It'll just be operations at that point.
Okay.
But will there be revenue?
There will be. So there'll be both, a couple of different ways. One is that we're going to save costs that we're spending right now for disposal of this material, which is a significant cost. But we also expect that we will have an operator out there who turns this into a product that's able to be sold. So there'll be some revenue from that. And there'll also be tipping fees for like small landscaping companies that want to dispose of the yard waste that they generate. They can take it here, and there'll be tipping fees as well.
So turning back to the capital budget, was this $9 million in the bond issuances that we're talking with Davenport about this morning? Or is this just a placeholder number and we don't really know what we're going to need as far as?
So the Davenport presentation this morning included only the general fund funded bonds. not the bonds that would be funded by the enterprise fund. So no, this was not a part of their presentation.
Yeah, you're right, I forgot. Are we, I think I remember we're permanently out of the business of revenue bonds. This could conceivably be a revenue bond though, right?
It could be a revenue bond, but I would like to be out of the business of revenue bonds. I would consider it if it was something that I thought would help in the situation, but they're a little bit more to manage. And like I say, the manpower involved in trying to manage a revenue bond issue is much more cumbersome than a GO issue.
Understood.
But it is something that could be supported by the revenues.
Okay. Any other questions before we move on? I'm excited about this. I think this is a great project.
Could I add something else too? I just would like to point out that this project would help reduce our carbon footprint, because right now we haul our yard waste 26 miles, the organic waste from the wastewater treatment plant, which, as you know, we co-own with the county, and they haul it out of state. And that it would be great that we would only have the whatever the distance is. I don't know. It's like 8 miles maybe. Anyway, I just wanted to point out that it's a really good project.
And the other part of this that we haven't really talked about so much is the food waste that goes out with people's trash right now. We hope to be able to turn that into a usable product as well. So we'll gradually move into the food waste area and send it to the same facility.
Could this potentially replace the lost revenue from recycling when we move into the food waste with the tipping fees and the sale of the product, which of course we'll all use on our lawns instead of chemicals?
Yeah, potentially it could, but we're not sure. I forget what the numbers are, but we have the feasibility study. So if anybody would like to see that feasibility study, that's available.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. If we ever see each other face to face again.
We can email it to you.
All right, thank you. Okay, next project.
Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is our annual water distribution rehabilitation. As you know, we replaced components of our water distribution system. And we have a comprehensive analysis plan that we're developing using our asset management practices. So we're requesting $4 million in FY21, and then it will increase starting FY22. And the funding will be split between bond and PAYGO, $2.8 million to $1.2 million.
Okay.
Go ahead. Any question?
Nope.
Okay, moving on. Next slide, please. And we're not requesting any money for the sewer rehab because we've been doing a lot of design this year and we don't need money. So that's why that one is not being shown. So now we're on to the stormwater management retrofit projects, which is another annually funded account that we use $100,000 each year for storm drain system repairs, which could be anything from an outfall to, a system has collapsed or whatever, because, as you know, everything has a lifespan. Any questions on this one?
We're not going to have any questions from the Annapolis Environmental Commission about these funds and whether they're coming out of our what is the fund that we set aside years ago?
It's the Watershed Restoration Fund. So you'll recall that last year we changed the definition of what that fund can be used for, and it clearly can be used for the storm drain system. The storm drain system is such an important part of the water quality system in the city that it's an okay use.
Okay, thank you. We're going to hear from somebody.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this project is funded in over $1 million a year. It's for stormwater MS4 permit compliance. So we are working with our long-term contractor to keep up with the MS4 program, which is part of the Clean Water Act. And the bulk of the work that we're doing is new and retrofit BMPs to be developed, designed, and constructed in various watersheds throughout the city. Any questions?
It shows the outgoing years are PAYGO. That's from the Watershed Restoration Fund that we pay when we pay our water bill.
Yes.
Correct.
And is this the one that Doug Lashley is part of the project on?
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. This is a stretch, but is this an opportunity for the street cleaning thing we talked about last week, paying for the street cleaning coordinator, because that would contribute to best management practices?
So they are related. It's the same program. That program has many different components, and absolutely the street sweeping is one. We're trying to meet our MS4 permit goals, and the street sweeping program, which would be handled in the operating budget with that position that we discussed, and that's how that one will be operated.
It's a person. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, then we're almost finished. One more to go. Next slide, please. This one is. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's yay. Wait.
Oh,
I made
okay.
a sign. Can you see my
Okay.
sign?
Oh, that's great. I love it. So this is to provide storm drainage improvements to the Truxton Heights neighborhood, which is another one of our neighborhoods we have around town that was developed without good drainage design, and there's flooding on the streets, private property. So what we're doing, we've already are starting to review some preliminary watershed analysis studies, and we're requesting $345,000 for this coming fiscal year to allow design to start as a result of the watershed studies. And I believe the out years are significantly more money. But this would, FY22 is over $2 million. It will be very expensive to provide these, the drainage. If you do it later, it's just harder and more expensive, but that's what we're gonna do.
You mentioned that it was private property.
Well, it's people's yards. So when I say private property, all of our construction will be done either in the public right of way, and if we need to get some easements from private property, we will. But what happens is some people's private property experiences some flooding, and that's what I meant by that.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Sure. Any other questions?
I think that wraps that part up. Committee members, how do you want to handle, I don't know how much discussion we need going back to the...
Annette, we actually have one last slide.
Oh, all right.
So Marcia finished hers and was handing it over to me.
Okay.
So you'll recall that the way this CIP is excuse me. So the FY21 capital projects is an ordinance, so you'll actually approve the funding. The FY22 through 26 is a resolution. So it's a plan. So this is a summary of where the funding would come from for the projects. It doesn't list all of the projects. Those are all in the book, but I just wanted to give you a sense of how much and what type of funding would be in the planned right now in the FY22 through 26 CIP. So we have a big jump in FY23, mostly because that includes the city dock revitalization project. So that $4 million of resilience authority, as well as, I think that big number for on the enterprise funds is for the organics facility. So both of those cause FY23 to be a very big year if this funding moves forward as planned right now.
And council members, this also shows up on page 12 of our capital budget book there with all of the detail.
So no need to go into great detail here. This is just the plan, but this is sort of a sense of what the plan is and the amounts of funding that we're thinking about right now. This, as you all know, this changes year to year. So as the FY22 becomes the year that we look to get funding, it will change somewhat, but this is for planning purposes.
May I ask, David, the capital reserve fund that doubles over 23 and 24, and then 50% less, it looks like, almost, of what it is for 22. Is that just the plan, the proposed plan?
Yes, and Jody can add to this, but we're not expecting a lot of money to flow into the capital reserve fund. So you remember that when we have surplus funds from a current year, they flow into the capital reserve fund and can be used in the future. We're not expecting those to be big numbers in the future. So we've kind of tamped back on how much funding is going to be available through that fund. Jody, do you want to add anything?
I will add that what we have in what you see here in the 21 and the rest of the CIP, we do have the funds sitting in the capital reserve fund to absorb those amounts. But as David was saying, we typically program the use of the capital reserve fund, and then at the end of the year we have a good year, so we add another layer in there and we have more to spend. And I just think, I know at the end of this year and next year, we're probably going to be lean there. So we won't be adding a lot in the next 2 years. I hope in future years we're back to where we were before, where we can replenish the capital reserve fund. But for right now, it's looking like we won't have a lot of excess fund balance to add to the reserve.
It's looking like years 25 and 26 are going to be the more difficult years. Am I misreading that?
What are you, so the capital reserve fund that you see here and in the book, on page 12 of the budget book, and this is the CIP book. We have a page here that talks about, it's all about summarizing the funding sources for the projects. And down near the bottom in the other category on that page, there's a line called Capital Reserve Fund. All right, so in 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26, those amounts, if you add them together, we have enough right now in the capital reserve fund to cover those, if we never got any more funds in capital reserve. And I expect that FY20 and FY21 will not be adding big layers to that reserve. So in the future, in 23, 24, 25, we may have extra money going into that fund. I just don't know. I just think the next 2 fiscal years we're projecting aren't going to have a lot of excess fund balance to replenish the reserve.
So Sheila, to go back to your initial comment, I think David correctly pointed out, fiscal 23 is the big action year. And on this page that Jody had us looking at, the big mystery number is that $4 million for the Resiliency Financing Authority. And we still don't know much, we as a council, or at least I don't know much about what that's going to be. I know that Dan Nees and Joanna Toro have done some work with principally Public Works and the city manager. There was a mention by Dan in a presentation of a whole prioritization of different projects. I believe, David, we're waiting to see what happens at the state level in terms of the authorizing legislation. But at that point, we get to find out how $4 million gets into this mystery box and why we're only showing it appearing in fiscal 23. So I think there's some issues that the Finance Committee and the Council will want to discuss when we get to the capital budget vis-a-vis these particular items. And then Sheila, when you look in all of the other years on pages 13 and 14, I do think that it's fiscal 23 where the large amount of monies are, and then things slow down again. So I think we have to focus on trying to discern what it is exactly that's going on in fiscal 23 for capital investments, and then how it actually slows back down in 24 and 25.
Yeah, if I could talk just a minute about that. So the Resilience Authority, the enabling legislation was passed by the General Assembly. So it's awaiting the governor's signature. We anticipate that he's going to sign it. It doesn't involve any state money, so there's no state outlay that's required. It just enables local governments to establish resilience authorities. The $4 million that's here is for City Dock. It's to implement the consensus plan for City Dock. All of the other projects that Dan put together with Joanne will be future year projects, but everybody's in agreement. So, we worked this together with the county, and the county is also going to be involved with the Resilience Authority, and they have a lot of needs. But everybody agreed that the first project out of the box, which is the one that's shown here, is to do at least the flood mitigation for the Dock Street side of City Dock. We're taking care of the Compromise Street side. The Dock Street side still needs to be done, and we anticipate that all of the consensus plan type work will also be added to that project as well. So that's what's shown as the $4 million, and why there's not additional money, because that will all be determined as the Resilience Authority stands up and starts looking at that list that Dan and Joanne did, both for the city as well as they're doing that for the county as well. So there'll be a prioritization process for the funding that's available, but the first project out of the box is City Dock.
I'm sorry, I was late this afternoon. You may have already talked about this, but so where does Hillman's revenue come into this? Is Hillman's revenue a funding source for City Dock?
Yeah, we'll have a whole lot more information about that when we come forward with whoever's selected as the service as a provider for them.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Takia, could you put on our Finance Committee parking lot, though? I would like for us to come back and spend just a little more time looking at pages 10 through 14, and particularly noting the bulge in fiscal 23, making sure we exactly understand all the components. And I think one of the favors we can do our colleagues on the council at large is to give them a walkthrough of those pages. The CIP itself, and particularly with if we attach the PowerPoints that Marcia gave us, I think is reasonably self-explanatory to the council. But the capital budget itself and then these out years, I think at least I feel the need to take a little longer look at that.
Ross, could we also add transit to the discussion about revenues from Hillman Garage?
Yeah, and I want to talk about transit more generally anyway. When Jody mentioned the other day that transit is an enterprise fund, I didn't remember that it was, but transit is so interrelated with parking and all of these flows, and I think is also something that is currently in duress because it has purview over both the transit system and also with SP Plus, the running of the garages. So, yeah, I think you're right, Sheila. We really do need to think about them together.
Was there a question in there for me or no?
No, I don't think so. I think I was talking to the committee saying,
Okay.
just think when we get into our deliberations, we need to come back and trace through the monies both for Capital 21, but Resolution 22 through 26, and make sure we understand those flows over time. There are a lot of other projects that we, in the CIP, that we didn't talk about. The one I just happened to flip to is one that's near and dear. We didn't talk about it, but it's wayfinding. And I think that also is related, Ellie, I would bring you into this too, how we get people to parking efficiently. I mean, one of the hopes had been that will get people to our underutilized garages. And when Hillman is down, what I presume, I pray or hope, are not underutilized garages, because that's where people are going to have to go, including us, I assume, as people visiting Gorman. And we're going to have to talk about, and I know this is also part of the RFP, how we get people back and forth from the GOTS to the City Hall. So again, Sheila, I think you're right. All of these things come together and we need to look at them sort of globally.
I think David can answer, but my understanding is all those logistics, for lack of a better word, are part of the present RFP.
They are.
Yes, they are. That's correct.
Yep. So in many senses, we're going to be doing this capital budget, but it's kind of a placeholder in a sense. Some of these routine things, streets and sidewalks and all of the other kinds of things that Marcia went through are ongoing projects. But when we get that RFP, that's going to, I think, put a different light on all of these things. I don't know, but I think. All right. Is there anything else from the committee that we would ask on the capital budget or the CIP or the debt capacity update?
None.
All right. Well, I believe then that finishes the agenda from the morning. Am I correct in that?
Believe so.
So,
All right. So now I've got to go find the agenda for the afternoon, which is 22
Believe
p.m.
grants are next.
Yes, we amended the agenda, Fred, while you were getting to the meeting to do the finish off the capital and then to move to community grants. And then if we have time left, we would do finance. I think we have a preparation from Jody to go over, but we'll see how we do. We're already, we have an hour and 20 minutes. So, Lynn, do you have a presentation? Should we-
Yes, Julian, I think you can put that up. Is that correct?
Why am I getting an error?
Okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. So thanks for allowing this time to talk about the investment the city makes in community nonprofit organizations that help bolster our families and all of our community on a number of levels. Next slide, Julian.
First of all, that picture makes you want to cry. Those kids are cute.
It's so adorable.
I sent an email out to the grantees, the current grantees, asking for photographs, and I got a ton of them. So this is just a portion. I started to do a collage at the end, but I thought, oh, that would be boring. As you all know, the community grant program is authorized through the city code, and it authorizes the city council to make both operating and capital grants. This year we did not get any capital grant requests. So all of the grant proposals you will see in the table that you have, as well as on the screen here, are for operating funds. Next slide, please. So, of course, subject to the availability of funds through the city budget, the city council will consider grants for proposals for any one of a number of priorities, sustaining families and individuals and moving them towards self-sufficiency, programs that enhance the community's character, programs that contribute to the vibrancy of the economy, and programs that are integral to community revitalization, economic development, and environmental sustainability. Next slide, please. So this year, we convened a committee, as we do always, as we are required to do by city code. And this year, the committee was made up of members of the Annapolis Police Department, the Annapolis Fire Department, and the Department of Planning and Zoning. Originally, we had planned to have a member of the Department of Emergency Management on the grant review team as well, but because of the COVID crisis, we exchanged that person and added another member of the Department of Planning and Zoning. So that committee was given a number of proposals to review. They each reviewed them and checked to make sure that all of the required documents were included. And then we met as a committee virtually to discuss and convene and collaborate the proposals that were made. Understanding that the amount of funding that was available is level to the amount of funding that was level in FY20. My role in the process was just to facilitate the committee. I did not have any role in determining what proposals were funded. We did deliberate over, or the committee did deliberate over the amount of funding for each organization, and I was able to help facilitate that just to make sure our numbers were adding up. But that was basically my only goal. Next slide, please. So all in all, there were 30 proposals that totaled $646,000, almost $647,000. There were a number of different kinds of proposals. And so we didn't have, we certainly had a diversity in the types of programs we could fund. Any questions here? I'll stop here for a moment. Any questions here? Okay. Next slide.
Lynn,
Yes.
how many, there were, I'm guessing about 10 people maybe turned down. What was the most common reason? I mean, what were you really looking for when you were awarded a grant?
So let's go to the next slide, and then we can talk about that. Okay. So one of the things, Alderman Payon, we looked at what were the most important services that needed to be provided in community, and in light of the COVID crisis, what were the things that were going to be the greatest need in the community following COVID. So you will, if you look at the spreadsheet, which is not to be shown on the screen, I don't think. But if you look at the spreadsheet, you'll see that organizations that provide homeless services and organizations that that provide any educational opportunities for both adults and children were funded at the highest level we could. And so those were the kinds of things. We also took into account the organizations that are currently funded and how much they have spent so far this year. And whether or not organizations had submitted their reports, not on time, but if they had submitted them and that they were showing that they were doing work currently and how they were spending those funds. And that was prior to COVID, really, more than anything else. But you'll see that we recommended funding for one organization that provides food programs, 5 educational programs for youth, one program that provides services for life skills, and that program will focus particularly on the Robinwood community and the families that are moving from Newtown to Robinwood. So the increased number of families that'll be in the Robinwood community, we hope that the council will agree with us that we need additional services in that community for those residents in that community to help them through this challenging time. There are 2 educational programs for adults. 2 of them applied and both were funded. We recommended funding for 3 of the homeless and addiction prevention programs. In addition to those programs that submitted proposals, then we also, as a part of this line item in the budget, fund the county for the homeless services, assistance services that they provide to the city. And that is crucial, that we help them, Alderman Gay, that we help them provide those services strictly in the city. Yes, Alderman Gay, go ahead.
Yeah, is that on the spreadsheet, the breakdown exactly? Because I'm not finding that how much exactly we give to.
Yes, it is there. It is under, it says Anne Arundel County Department of Social Services.
Oh, okay, that's why.
Okay, that's what that funding is. I don't think we want that on the screen.
So is proposed.
I don't think we want that on the screen. Thank you.
Proposed is so I shouldn't say was proposed?
No.
Okay.
No.
So
I don't think so. I mean, that's up to the committee, but I'm not sure how you want to handle. Sheila, you're on mute. Alderwoman.
The committees don't have this discussion. We have to have this discussion.
Okay, and
the allocations that have been presented here. So just
okay, go ahead then. I'm sorry.
But before we do that, I want to go back to page 22 in the budget binder, because I'm looking at the history over time. Community block grants in 19 actual, $430,000. Budgeted in 2020 was $463,500. Actual projected for 2020, $236,000. And what's proposed in the mayor's budget, which I'm having a hard time.
So that's a different fund, Alderman Arnett. You're right. The community block grants and community grants are 2 different funds.
Yes, you're right. And where do we find the community grants?
I can point you to page 87 in your budget book. The line item where we charge the community grants is in the finance non-allocated section.
Page 87, did you say?
Yes, page 87.
I'm trying to get to that. Come on.
The numbers don't jive.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything that says unallocated or non-allocated at the bottom. Sorry.
I'm having a hard time.
So if you look in that table under finance non-allocated and you look at the second line item, and it's the total allocated for community grants is 429,700. Do you see that number?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that 429,700 agrees to Lynn's schedule that she's given you separately for the grant awards for 21.
So I guess
Go ahead, Sheila.
the difference, I'm looking at the third column under the mayor's proposed budget, which is 453,428. So what is the difference?
Mine actually says 429,700. I don't know what you're looking at.
Under FY21 mayor's proposed budget?
Mine totals 429,700. That's what my spreadsheet totals to. Was there a previous schedule, Lynn, that had a different number on it?
I don't know.
Sheila, are you on page 87?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. No.
On page 87, it's 429. I'm looking at the chart which lists the proposed allocations for all of the nonprofits. And that total for community grants is 453,004.
You're looking at the 21.
Oh.
Or the mayor's proposed budget. So where is that number?
So I just sent you an email, Sheila, that has the one that I'm looking at. With totals 429,700. I don't have one that says 453.
I'm not sure where the 453 came
So
from.
the schedule has 3 pages to it. The first page has a number that goes category 1 subtotal 283,428. The next page has a number 142,000, and the third page has 28,000, all of which add up, apparently, I believe it's correct, to 453,428.
Okay, so your three, the
Did
three.
you look at the latest thing that Lynn sent us at 1 o'clock?
I think that's what I'm looking at.
It says 429,700.
In the third column,
Yes.
Yeah.
that's not what mine shows. Mine
Well,
shows,
you have the attachment sent at 1 o'clock, 1 p.m.
you know what? We can't get a new attachment every hour and expect us to be able to follow it. I'm sorry.
Alderwoman Finlayson,
Yes.
I just sent you an email with an attachment that has the one that I'm looking at.
Are you sending that to all of us?
Do you have the wrong one as well?
Well, I'm not sure what I have. I have the three-page printout that was reporting. Oops, come on!
There was one that was just sent to us, as Fred mentioned, at around like 12:50 that has all of the information on
There's
it.
one with 3 pages. The first page has category 1 total of 283,428. There's a second page with a number of 142,000 and a third page of 28,000, all of which is category 4, all of which add up to 453,428.
The new one I just received is the one that has the correct number, I assume. Which
Yes.
is 429,700.
429.7 is the correct number.
Okay, but that,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how you ended up with the incorrect numbers, and I apologize for that. But the category 1 should be 259.7, category 2, 142, and category 3, 28,000.
So what is category 1 again, please?
259.7.
259.7. So we'll have to get. So we'll have to get two.
Oh, Internet, I just sent you the same email with that schedule that I was looking at, so if you see your email and open that Excel schedule, that's the more recent one. And I believe Alderman Payon has that one. Anybody else need the revised one? Alderman Gay said that he had the revised one. Let me know if anybody else needs to see something different.
Okay, so the bottom line should be 429.7.
Correct.
Yes.
And that agrees to the budget book page that I referred to you, page 87, and that's the total then.
Okay.
Okay. So then the next thing is, in years past, we had a schedule that showed us the applicants and awards for the past 2 or 3 years so that we can look at what's happening in the current year. I'm kind of flying in the dark here knowing, did people drop out? Like, I'm trying to see, here's We Care and Friends, so they're there. They asked for 30,000 in past years. I think we've given them a number more like that. So one of the things we do, Lynn, when we're looking at the community grants is we look at what people have been getting and then what they are. But even going back to your presentation, I'm kind of interested in the different categories on your last last PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, so if you want, I'll go back to my presentation. So I was on slide number 6. If you want, I can go back to that.
That is it, because 1 for food, 5 for education, 1 for mentoring. It's hard to 9 for youth and adults. It's hard for me, and I usually do get my tutelage from Sheila about all of these different distributions, but it isn't even across all categories. So 9 programs for services for youth and adults, which are services, I don't know of what kind. How is...
It's on the spreadsheet. If you look on the spreadsheet, it lists each individual one.
And Alderman Arnett, the spreadsheet is divided in categories that pretty much follow the order that she has them here on the slide.
Yeah, I see that, but what I don't see is, do they follow the order of what we have done in the past in terms of these organizations?
So I will say that we have the FY20, what the council approved in FY20 is the first column after the list on that spreadsheet.
Yes, but I noticed that column is hidden. When I opened the email and opened the Excel document, the column B with the FY20 adopted piece is hidden. So they have to unhide column B.
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't realize that.
Yes, and
Sorry.
so I sent Sheila an email on that because I know she's interested in seeing the 20 breakdown, but for everybody else's sake, if you can unhide column B, if you know how to do that.
It shows up on my document.
Okay. Mine was hidden when I opened it, but I'm glad it shows there.
So mine's hidden, but I don't have the right document anyway. Let's on in, and then I want to go back and ask some other questions.
Okay. So you'll note in the proposed budget for FY21, the funding for homeless services and the funding for winter relief are both included there. The Office of Emergency Management asked for an increase in the funds for winter relief, and we did that. So they asked for $7,500, and so that recommendation was taken.
You said that winter relief was under Anne Arundel County Department of Social Services, correct?
No, winter relief is under winter relief. It just says winter relief program.
Okay, so is the homelessness and
right? The homelessness is yes.
Okay, so a quick question then, and back to what the original question was that I was asking you about this one. So in fiscal year 20, they were given $15,000. And so I don't ever want to come across as like rude when I ask a question, but with that amount of money, and sometimes the questions that we receive from the general public about how the services are provided, would it be better off as us as a city if we kept that and provided those services ourselves instead of handing it off to the county, the homelessness services, and then having to coordinate with them to, find shelters and all of this stuff? Is there any way within our capabilities could potentially run that?
So here's what I would say. If we were to try and run that ourselves, it would cost us a lot more than $15,000 or $20,000. So we are able to leverage funding with the county because they have the systems in place. And so we provide just a portion of what it costs for them to provide the service. We don't end up absorbing the entire cost of providing the service in the city by leveraging the funding from the county. So that's what I would say.
That makes sense when you say it that way. It's saving money.
Because they have a system set up, and we would have to set up an entire system to do that. And I mean, as far as I know, the services that are provided by the county are, they are very responsive, and we seem to be able to solve problems even on an individual basis.
May I interject, Alderman Gay? All of these nonprofits are able to provide a service that we need in the city, but that the city cannot provide. We had talked about creating a Department of Social Services under which many of these programs could have been accommodated, but it's not possible with the size of our city and the revenue that we have to provide all of these services. So we have to rely on our nonprofits. Now, the county has county tax dollars far bigger than ours, and we are part of the county. So their social services department is responsible for the city also. If we had our own social services department, it would be something different, and that would be our responsibility, but we do not. And so we are part of the county. And there are county residents who say we're paying twice because they're paying it through their taxes. And now we're talking about funding them again. So just keep that in mind as we, further go into detail about these nonprofit grants. And I'll hold the rest of my questions until you finish.
Okay.
I appreciate that breakdown, Sheila.
I'm sorry?
No, I was just saying I appreciate that, the breakdown.
So, as I said, also included in that were the winter relief services. The services that you'll see in the youth and adults category also includes the HACA inspections. And that number is level to the number that that was funded in FY20. Yes, Alderman Gay.
So I know this was something that was agreed on prior to me even joining the council, but I think that it's shocking. I mean, that we're taking away what could potentially be $80,000 for other projects. When I get that the agreement was made, basically we're paying ourselves. I mean, we're taking $80,000, giving it to them, and then giving it back, correct?
No, it's really not. We're not taking $80,000 away from anything. We just want to show that is $80,000 that we invest in community.
So the $80,000 potentially, so that money had already been earmarked for HACA projects?
Yes, that's correct.
No,
so Jody, you want to jump in here?
Yes.
Yeah, not for HACA projects. It was for HACA
inspections. I'm sorry. Yeah, not for projects, but for HACA inspections.
Okay, so go ahead.
Go ahead, Jody. Go ahead.
Okay, so in the years before we added the $80,000 for HACA inspections, the amount for community grants was $80,000 less. Last year, we tacked that amount on as a grant to HACA so that we could get them inspection services for the units. And as we are inspecting these units, we record that we've granted HACA the funds, and then we recognize revenues in planning and zoning for those inspection fees. So we're really doing inspections for no charge for those units. That's what this grant is funding.
Do you think that we could potentially be at any point where HACA could be self-sufficient, and that $80,000, which was for HACA, could be used for other projects that could help the actual communities? And I mean, not to say that the inspections are not important, but I look at that $80,000 as something that HACA should out of maybe their rent, the rental income, or some stream of revenue that they should have, maybe from the federal government. Why?
So this grant that we are given to HACA is paying for the salaries of people in planning and zoning that are doing the inspections. And these are people that we have on staff to do inspections. So if we were to try to reroute some of that 80,000 to other organizations, that's actual cash out the door for other organizations, whereas now we're just using it to cover the staff costs in planning and zoning. So
Go ahead, Alderwoman Finlayson. You have a question?
Just a little bit of background, and I'm going to walk lightly here because we're in the midst of a lawsuit. But in previous administrations, when we were discussing inspections for HACA, we charge every company that has units in our city $100 per unit.
Right.
Okay. And so part of the discussion was, it's not fair to HACA to insist that we're going to do inspections, and then, by the way, we're going to charge you to do it. So we came up with a mechanism to fund those inspections. The other communities were saying, well, why is it that you're covering the cost of HACA's units? I have units, why do I have to pay? So we got into that dilemma. I think there's some question about where this is placed. Probably shouldn't be in community grants. Probably should be in planning and zoning in their inspections division.
Yeah,
Because where the money ends up anyway. Okay, but the amount that's allocated is to cover the cost at $100 per unit for inspections, which is what we charge everybody else in the city who has a rental unit.
What is the reason why we're carrying this cost here? Because as Sheila says, it's an operational cost, not a gift.
Well, and that the question is why it's in community grants.
Right, correct.
And I think it probably should be in planning and zoning, but that's not where it is right now. So, we can talk about taking it out and putting it in a more appropriate place.
So,
But I think you'd understand why, that $100 per unit, which gives us however many, they have 800 units, $100 times 800 comes up to the 80,000. So that's the number that we're dealing with.
So no matter where we put it, it's a finesse. When we started doing the inspections, we charged HACA like we charged everybody else, and they didn't have the money. And we thought that getting the inspections done was much more important than worrying about where we parked the money. We parked it here. I don't know where is I think Sheila might be right. Maybe it should be showing up in planning and zoning. No matter where we park it, other organizations are going to say to us, why do they get subsidized inspections and we don't? And there are organizations that are also on vouchers and things like that probably don't have a lot of extra money. So this is a ticklish thing, and I think you're right, Sheila. We need to be very constrained in how much we go into this. I'm sure Mr. Lyle would be apoplectic if he heard us having any of this discussion, but it is here. It is something that we're going to pay. Lynn is correct and Jody both that we increased the amount that was in community grants by 80,000 a few years ago, actually under a previous administration, I think. So it's here by tradition.
Where did the money come from?
FY20 was the first year that we did this grant in the budget.
It comes from taxpayers. It comes out of our tax revenue.
Okay, so I was kind of right when I said that we kind of pay ourselves in a way. So it's not a grant that pays. Okay, so yeah, when you say grant that pays planning and zoning or that pays the inspectors, I thought it was maybe coming from like the state or something. So
No.
it's taxpayers' money paying for HACA's inspections.
The social philosophy is that everybody benefits when we inspect and make sure that rental properties meet a certain standard. If we don't do that, it affects the health of children, affects their educational attainment, it spreads to other units and so forth. So we feel that inspections for every property is a social good and that it should be paid for directly by the organization or indirectly through a mechanism like this because the entire city benefits from it. Certainly the residents directly involved benefit most directly, but we all also benefit from it. It's a social program.
Yeah. So, do you think that at some point we would get to a place where wasn't an original agreement made out that says, okay, HACA, so we'll do this for 4 years, but you better start stacking the coffers so that you're able to take over this at some point. And additionally, once they do take over, would you keep the community grants, that additional $80,000 in as a community grant because it's already there and use it for additional programs that would then benefit the community even more?
Well, that's a policy decision that the council gets to make. We can determine amongst ourselves, including the mayor, because he's part of the council, whether this is the right amount of money to go to community grants. As I've said on numerous occasions, we spend more money talking about community grants than anything else in the finance committee, followed by talking about the capital improvement project. And then the huge bolus of money, the appropriations budget. And there's a reason for that. The appropriations budget is so heavily controlled by the amount we pay in salaries and benefits, which itself is negotiated. So we don't really have a lot of discretion there. We pretty much build the budget by looking at all those things that we have to spend, and then we look for the revenues to cover that spending. And then the more discretionary things, which are more in the bailiwick of the council, fall to capital spending, capital projects, and the community grants. And in many early years, when Sheila and I were first on the council, the finance committee basically only talked about community grants. It went on for days.
And how much were we giving back then? I think
$800,000.
how much?
$80,000. $800,000.
1,000
And
is
then
what
it
we
got chopped under Josh to 400,000.
400,000, right. It got cut in half. The first year I managed the community grants program, it got cut in half, so.
Right.
Well,
So,
and that was a bad year when we let
It
people
was a
go.
tough year.
okay.
Yeah. That was during the recession.
Almost a million. Wow.
So I do.
Alderman Payon has his hand up, Alderman
sorry.
Arnett.
Thank you. Wondering if I can still move my arm. It's been up so long. Alderman Gay, you are not alone, I can assure you, in questioning the logic of doing this. There's several of these things that we are, giving to the county or giving to an organization, a county organization or a state organization. doesn't make any sense to me either, but we're not here today to really argue the merits of any of these. We're simply here to listen to the, what they are, whether or not, have it explained to us, that's all. And the argument back and forth about who we ought to be giving it to should be saved for another day, in my opinion. And but you're not alone. Just wanted to let you know. Maybe the first one you've been through, but you're raising questions a number of us have raised over the years. And I don't have a satisfactory answer for you, but hopefully it goes for a good cause and ultimately in the right place. So thank you.
I do have one specific question, Lynn, and that's usually when nobody requests a grant, they don't get a grant. But we have the Anne Arundel County Department of Social Services that didn't appear to request a grant, and then they got $20,000.
So that happens in 3 instances in the Anne Arundel County Department of Social Services, which is the funding to the county for homeless services. It also happens with the winter relief and then with the HACA inspection. So it's 3, that happens on 3 occasions where they are not required to submit a proposal. Yes, Alderman Payam.
Thank you. How can you possibly justify giving somebody a grant that didn't even ask?
Well, it's not that they didn't ask for one. They are not required to submit a proposal.
By whom?
By you all.
Mm-mm.
No?
No.
That's not true? Okay.
No.
I guess I missed that over the years.
I don't think that's a requirement at all set down by us. I'm not sure where it came from, but no.
Well, so I'm not sure where it came from either. But that's the way it's been in years past, that there was no proposal submitted, but there was funding.
Lynn, have you finished? Because I have I think so, but finish your presentation.
I think I have one more slide, but I think it's just the, so you can advance it, Julian. Next slide, please.
Chairman.
So this is just the summary. So there were 30 proposals totaling $640,000. There were 28 awards, including the 3 that there were no proposals for. So 33 requests, 28 awards totaling $429,700. That's it. And this is a really cute picture too. I don't know that people can see it.
If we slice the funding from the groups that didn't ask, we could actually give money to the other 2 programs that did ask.
It's more than 2 programs that didn't get funded. I think it's like 5, but there were reasons why they weren't funded. So,
can you tell us what the reasons were?
So,
and I'm not talking individuals. I just want to know by which state they were made.
So there are a number of reasons why organizations were not funded. One was that if they were funded in FY20, we didn't really see the value in continuing the funding based on the reports that they've submitted so far this year. There were organizations that some did not apply. Some organizations that were funded last year did not apply. Some did not submit a full proposal. And then there were others that the review committee just didn't see that what they were asking was a priority. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
A reminder to the council members, usually all of these groups will come to the city council meeting. I don't know what'll happen this year, to make their pitch. And, I'm looking at some old friends like We Karen friends that are taking a significant reduction in the amount they've traditionally gotten. Going through the whole list, but we will we will be approached at a council meeting in some form from each of these groups making their pitch to get their full amount. And usually the council at large then decides what they want to do with the recommendation that comes from the Finance Committee, which is, with just a little bit of adjustment, pretty much what comes to the Finance Committee from the Committee Grants Committee.
Hey, Ross, in the interest of transparency, when does this go public? I mean, when is this budget being able, I know that usually we get it in our book. What?
Look now,
Oh, I mean, the numbers and stuff that just,
anybody who's watching us sees the,
okay, I just didn't see it on the screen, that's
They
all.
don't see this, they haven't seen the spreadsheet on the screen, I don't think.
well,
No,
yeah.
Traditionally, this has been part of the mayor's budget. So we've gotten it in advance of the
Right.
finance committee receiving it.
right,
You're just getting it. So that's what I think you're talking about.
thank you, Sheila.
I did not realize that.
Mr. Chair, can I ask my questions?
Please, and then we'll get to Alderman Gay.
Okay. We talked about HACA, and I think that will bear out a further discussion at some point in the future. Who is Winter Relief, Lynn?
So this year, the winter relief services were provided by an organization called Blessed in Tech. And as you may recall, the organization that previously received the winter relief funding was not able to get their certificate of good standing in time to be able to provide the services, for us to be able to provide the funding to them to provide the services. So we do require, go ahead.
So do you know how many people they service? Because that was a big component. You know, we had issues with holding some of our nonprofits to standards that, because of what they do, it's very difficult to meet our standards. I don't know what a certificate of, that must be something new that's being implemented.
No, that's nothing new. We've always, as does any granting organization in the state of Maryland, require that organizations file all of their appropriate papers with the State Department of Assessments and Taxation. And that is something that has always been the responsibility of any nonprofit to get funding from any organization, not just the city of Annapolis.
So you're telling me that in the past, when we have given nonprofit grants, that we go to the state to make sure they have the certificate?
So they have to submit it with their application, yes.
Okay. Do we have a copy of that application? I understand it changed somewhat this year.
Yes, it's available on the city website, and I believe I sent it to all of you when it was made available to the nonprofits. The only change we made, the only real change we made was not having it in those boxes so that people had to like cut and paste from a Word document and put it into a separate document. That was basically the only change that was made.
I got some calls from some of the nonprofits a few months ago about the requests for information about salaries of their employees, as if that were to be used as a standard for getting the city grant.
So let me clarify that. Just the budget, we gave the nonprofits a budget form. It was not different from any other budget form that they've had in the past. But we gave them a sample budget form. And if they were requesting salaries as a part of their grant application, then we asked them to be as detailed as possible. But it was not a requirement.
Okay, I'm not sure that was clear to.
If they read the document, it should have been very clear because it said this is a sample.
Well, I'm speaking people who are very proficient and run organizations that are much even larger than ours. But anyway, the winter relief, and my church participates in winter relief, as do most of the churches in the community in the Annapolis area. So I was wondering which winter relief program we're looking to fund, and if there was some effort to seek out the other winter relief programs to make sure funding is spread around amongst them.
So this funding is the funding for the city's winter relief program. This is the extra emergency winter relief services that are only provided when the temperatures fall below a specific amount, and it's emergency for those persons that normally would not sleep in a shelter, would not be able to sleep in a shelter, only that they would, but we don't want them to sleep on the street because it's super duper cold.
Okay, so thank you. That's great clarification. So this is Kevin Simmons' Office of Emergency Preparedness Program that is run out of the Stanton Center.
That is correct.
Those 30 or 40 nights during the winter when it's extremely cold. Okay, so that's clear. Thank you. Robinwood, you mentioned special funding for Robinwood for families that have been displaced from Newtown. What of the families that are being moved to Harbor House, Eastport Terrace, or any other facility?
So most of the families are being placed in Robinwood, and so that's and there was a specific request from, trying to remember, there was a town hall, and someone said that specifically the Strengthening Families program that is provided in other parts of the city, if that could be provided in Robinwood, then that would be very helpful. And so that's why there was a huge increase, or not a huge, I shouldn't say huge. There was an increase in funding with one particular organization that provides mentoring and life skills for children and youth.
Okay, can you tell me what that organization?
It's Restoration Community Development Corporation. You'll see it if you look at the spreadsheet.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so their request was larger because they answered that call to provide the Strengthening Families, which is an evidence-based practice to help with parenting. Okay, you're shaking your head.
I'm very familiar with them. Yes.
Okay. So to provide that, to add that to the other services that they provide in that community.
Okay. I'm looking at the grant request column, and all of the organizations that have zeros did not make a request.
That's correct.
Including Muro.
That's correct.
Okay, is it because they didn't get their applications in a timely fashion?
No, there were no applications submitted late, but they did not submit an application.
And
so
the film festival I'm seeing, and they traditionally get $15,000.
Yeah, and they did not submit an application either.
Is that one of the organizations that didn't have to request submit an application?
No, they submitted a request in years prior, but this year they did not submit a request.
Okay. The prior year's history would be helpful. So So I think we need a column for 19 and 18 if you have them, so that we can see the history.
Okay. The request and the amount funded is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
That would.
All right. We will. Well, I can dig that up from somewhere, I'm sure.
Okay. And I guess my last question is about the categories. They seem a bit arbitrary. I might not categorize them in the same fashion that they've been categorized here. Was there a dollar amount distributed, or was there a plan to distribute a certain dollar amount in each category?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, if you could get us that that historical data, I think it would be very helpful in us coming
I
up
will do
with
that.
recommendations.
I will work to dig up that data. As you know, I was not here, so I don't have it in my records, but I will work to dig it up.
Well,
We might be able to help you, Lynn, because we have it in our archival materials too. Sheila.
Okay.
and
Thank you.
Nikki's office may have it. Nikki Pletzer's office, because she had the committee, and I suspect there was a file. Ross, you probably have it on your bookshelf too. So
I have a
Yeah.
here on the floor.
We'll work with Lynn, see what we can dig up in our records. I know I have last year's because I was here for last year's, and I'm sure I can find 19's. The one before, I'll have to dig for that one. If you
Yeah,
want.
I will have last year's, but I don't have the years prior.
Okay, so the thing is, do we have the schedule that says, here's what was requested and here's what was awarded? That's,
Right.
we always have the final awards, but I'm not sure about the different pieces of them.
Exactly. I don't know about the request, but I'll work on it and I'll try to get it to you and I'll get it to you as quickly as I possibly can.
So
thank you. And if you could
Ross
provide
is
the
gonna be
chart where I could make some additions to.
So there are columns for you all to make your additions.
But can we use it? I mean, can we access it?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yes. It's an Excel document. Yeah.
May I ask David a question? David, what's the status of the Kunta Kinte monument?
Back on. My understanding is that's been transferred to the city to handle the contract work. The individual that does that was hoping to start this spring, but because of the crisis, he has pushed that back. So he's hoping to come in the fall and do the routine maintenance work that's done every year.
Right.
Okay, so that would explain the reduction in the grant for the Kunta Kinte Foundation, the $6,000, $6,500, or whatever it costs to do the maintenance.
Last year, we actually did a budget transfer to move it from there to the Public Works budget so that they can oversee that work.
Do you need that again, or how's it being funded?
I think it's in their operating budget now.
Okay. All right, so that's
That
all.
wasn't something that we reduced this year, so that should continue to be in their operating budget.
In the Public Works operating budget.
Yes.
Okay. Lynn, Kunta Kinte celebration. I'm sorry, I skipped that. They requested 20,000 and they get nothing?
That's what the committee recommended. Yes. And I can get you notes, but yes, that is, that was a recommendation from the committee. I'll have to go back and look and tell you exactly why that one wasn't funded, but I can give you that information.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I don't have it in front of me right at this very moment, but.
Juan has been patiently waiting with his questions.
Well, first, in regards to that, I hope we're ready for a fee waiver then coming to the council of resolution because, but anywho, so am I allowed to ask personal questions about
You can't ask it about any of us.
For example, Jonathan Rose's company's Return to Learn. I personally overseen that application, and that was so that we could bring in like GED programs and stuff like that into Bay Ridge Gardens. And I know they had partnered with Annapolis OIC. So was that money just given directly to OIC and is expected to partner with?
So you will see. So one thing that one I do recall exactly why they were not funded. First of all, they're a for-profit entity. So you need to be a nonprofit to get the community grant. We could not fund a for-profit entity. OIC was fully funded for their request, and so
No, they weren't.
no, I'm sorry, they were not fully funded, but they had a much larger request. I'm sorry. But they were funded at a larger amount than they were last year. That's what I should say. Not that they were funded at the full amount of their request, but they were funded at a higher rate than they were last year. The other thing is, OIC is working directly with the police department to enhance their programming, and so you'll see a more robust program coming from OIC this year in 21, in FY21.
And I just have two more quick questions. Will we have an opportunity at some point in this budget process because again, all of this is proposed. So as a council, will we come forward and recommend what we think they should be funded, and then we have to, I guess, get a majority vote on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Finance Committee will go through, it will put together a report to the council, and it will make recommendations. And then we also have time during the council meeting process where each alderperson can come up with their own recommendations. I believe one year we had an alderwoman who had 199 amendments, some of them as small as a few $100. We had
They were all appropriate.
another alderperson who called the question before we got too deeply into it. But yeah, I mean, the budget goes from the Finance Committee to the council writ large for a period of deliberations and amendments, and it's not until everybody is satisfied. Largely the mayor's budget goes forward as it's submitted. Usually the changes are around the edges, and each alderperson has the right to offer amendments. This is one where there are often amendments offered. Sometimes it's in the capital grant, rarely in the appropriation side of things, as I said, because that comes so fairly locked in, but there have been proposals to change that as well. So every alderperson has the right and authority to offer whatever amendments they wish. It's usually a smart thing to find a cohort of people that are like-minded. So when you put that forward, there'll be a second and there'll be supporting comments. But yeah, that's how the process works.
Okay, I'm looking very much forward to that. I'm loving this, by the way. This is all fun.
Believe me, you won't enjoy it, particularly as it gets to be 3 or 4 in the morning, but that's okay.
So, and then lastly, I'm looking at a couple of the zeros that are kind of concerning, like Feed a Healthy Mind. I mean, with all of the food insecurity that's going on right now due to the coronavirus, these are just little things. And then again, the Community Action Agency Greenworks, which I know is important in making sure that like some of the youth in our communities are able to have jobs over the summer and, have just resources to rely on.
So the Community Action Agency did not request funding for that program because, as I understand it, they do not operate the program any longer.
I'm not sure about that.
Do they receive any
So,
funding?
but they did not submit a request last year or in FY20 or in FY21 for the community green jobs.
And just
So, and
I don't see them on this list.
I'm sorry, who's that?
The Community Action Agency.
Yeah, they're on the list. Their grant for the Youth Services Bureau is $30,000. Is the recommendation from the.
Oh, I see.
Okay. Which is $2,500 over what they received last year.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Alderwoman Tierney.
Hi, I'm confused. I'm looking at my last year's budget book, and there's a spreadsheet. It's very clear, and it has 4 categories: fiscal year 2019 adopted, fiscal year 2020 grant request, and then fiscal year 2020 committee recommendation. So my question is that the finance committee, or is that the committee that you are? I mean, who ultimately does this summary, which is really good, that's in our book?
Committee recommendation is the finance committee's recommendation.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
Those have not been made yet.
Okay. So we go back. So we should go back. We should follow this same format. And one thing I did notice is that we list new in our case, it would be new in 2021. We separate out some of the new ones. So it's a good way of, I found how we got the 80,000. All right. You have this, Lynn, right? You have last year's summary?
Yes.
The 4 columns? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So Takia just read my mind and sent me what we had last year and what we typically get each year, which I think could go to some of the questions you're asking, Dewan. You should get like a paragraph synopsis of each of the organizations that have made a request. And that goes a long way towards explaining things like the question you asked about the Community Action Agency and the Green Summer Works. If we don't have a little thumbnail sketch like that, then we know they didn't submit something. Usually, again, I'm lazy, I rely on Sheila. And she does a lot of the sleuthing for things like why we didn't get something from a group, or how a particular group has changed. The committee does that too. Teresa Wellman and Nikki really good job.
It was outside.
And so we're in a transition. I think Lynn is caught straddling a change in operations and a change in players. And I think you've done a great job, Lynn. I appreciate it. But I think there probably is a little bit more information. Yeah, could you forward to Lynn the same email you just sent me? Because those thumbnail sketches were what I was about to ask for. That's really for most of these organizations, a few of them I know, Box of Rain and Seek for Success, but a lot of these really only know them through the thumbnail sketches that we've gotten in the past. But that does clear up a lot of the confusion about what these rows mean, what the groups are, what they do.
I sent it to everyone, all the council members, Jody, David, and Lynn.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Takia, may I ask, I'm looking at one of the documents, and the heading is planning and zoning, and it includes home ownership trust fund projects, community legacy projects, as well as CDBG projects. Those are not the community grants, but this list does show what these groups are getting in addition to our community grants. I guess that's the
Alderwoman Finlayson, the reason those are all in the same schedule is because Teresa Wellman prepared the whole thing last year, and she was giving you a comprehensive list of everything she handles, so she put them all in one document.
Okay, but it does not include the community grants.
It hold on, I opened it up.
It's the last one. It's in color.
Some of the organizations get money from CDBG as well as community grants, but most of the community grants are on a separate sheet.
Yes, it's the last one. It's colorful. Purple, pink, blue, green, and yellow. Yeah. Okay, but this is what I need. This is 18, it goes back to 19 anyway.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay.
All right. Committee, where are we? Are there any other questions, requests for information from the Finance Committee or any of our other colleagues to that we need to finish out community grants?
None from me.
Lynn, I guess let us know if you need help pulling together the history. Let us know if you need help in terms of doing those thumbnails, and then everybody on the council will have gotten the information Takia's just sent, and I'm sure that's going to generate some further questions. And then committee, I assume when we start our deliberations, I think once again we have pushed things to the limit, unless Jody can do her presentation in 15 minutes, which I hope she can't. I hope she needs longer than
I
that.
would love to get it done in 15 minutes. And if I talked really fast and you had no questions, that might work, but I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. So I guess I'm ready to wrap up unless there's some more discussion in the community. And if there are, and so please, Lynn, again, thank you. And
Thank you.
I did like.
Thank you all.
I thought.
And I will let you know if I have further questions, but I welcome your other additional questions, and I'll work on the thumbnails.
Okay.
Okay.
That would really be helpful. And I think the other council members are not participating. And Duan, thank you for your participation today. I think that was very helpful to us. So that'll be, and then we'll come back to this as one of our deliberation items this week or next week, and it will show up in our final report to the council that we have to deliver the first council meeting in May. All right.
May I ask a question about tomorrow?
Yes.
So we're hearing from Law and Finance or Law and OEP?
Yes.
That's the answer.
Yeah, I think the OEP is a very interesting question. I do think we need to think of it because that's the current structure, but I'm hoping it's not going to be awkward for Jackie and for the city manager. But we certainly do need to hear from Law and Finance. And Takia has her hand up. Maybe she's going to save us.
I don't know about that. The OEP was a discussion. I don't think you guys ever decided. I remember giving you what days were available if you wanted to fit them in. I have not sent out any invites to anyone because it was never definitive if you were hearing them tomorrow or not. The agenda was posted prior to the conversation of adding OEP.
So David, what works for you in this regard for OEP?
I would say that needs to just be a discussion item because we don't have a section in the budget that's OEP to present. That's the mayor's budget. That's what we provided to you. So during the discussions, if that's the way you want to move, then you will, I guess, ask us to look at that and prepare some numbers and some information on what that will look like to have them back in the budget as a separate organization.
So I think that's what the Finance Committee deliberated on last week, that they wanted to see the budget shifted back to reflect, and I'm looking to my two colleagues, to the current structure. I guess I'm a little reticent there. I'd kind of like to have some other a polling of some of the other council meetings. The committee did what it did. It voted to see the budget recast to reflect the current organization. However, I would like to see, I'd like to have a sense of how likely it is that we're going to go ahead and agree to the reorganization that's been proposed. And I understand it's just that because of all the other things going on, that legislation didn't get into the works, in fact, still isn't on the agenda for this coming council meeting. But I don't have a strong sense that there's going to be opposition. I know, Sheila, you have, and I kind of share with you, we should have a discussion about how many deputy city managers are we going to have, and how do we determine what those priorities are? And you made that very clear when we were discussing this last week. And I think that the committee does need to pull that off of the parking lot and have that discussion. In terms of who she would invite tomorrow, it's definitely law and finance. And maybe we can ask Jackie to come at the end and have some discussion, but I'll throw that to you, Sheila and Fred.
Well, let me ask, because, you know, it looks like there's an effort to move OEP to a deputy position without any performance measures. We've held everybody else, every other department in the city, to a certain standard. But that department, office, or whatever has no standards?
Well, they
do. They have very robust standards.
Yeah.
Then why aren't we hearing them?
Because there's no budget. In the mayor's budget, there's no OEP. So I don't even know what she would present, because what we're asking each of the departments to present is their part of the budget that was submitted. There is no OEP budget from our submission. So I don't know what she would present. That's what I'm saying. When we move to the discussions, I think that we can have that conversation about what it would look like. But to bring Jackie and ask her to present her budget, there is no OEP budget.
Okay, so there is no budget, but there should be some goals and some objectives. We're talking creating a city position without those things?
Those exist.
Yes, and so Sheila, the very first thing in this performance measures that we got and came to the Rules Committee, the very first group was the OEP, but also I thought that—
multiple pages. I saw it.
Dr. Nash did a very artful finesse presentation of if this is moved over to— these functions are moved over to planning and zoning, that's what these people will do. So she talked about what Brian Adams would do. I think, David, is Racine planned to go to DPW and work on stormwater, Racine Hodo?
Yeah, no, so Racine stays with Jackie and comes to the mayor's, or to the city manager office.
All right, so in terms of budget impact, where the people are does not change the dollars. It changes, some new dollars will show up in planning and zoning because they're no longer in OEP. That's the right office, environmental policy, right. The dollars for Jackie and Hodo will show up as an adjunct to the city manager's office. So the dollars, and then the functions will, I assume, they'll be rewritten so that Jackie and Racine will be carrying out some things in the city manager's office. Brian Adams will be carrying out his things in planning and zoning. Did I get that too terribly garbled, or did I say that right, Dave?
Yeah, that's right. And those performance measures that we're talking about are actually in the budget book. I think they're the first ones that are listed as resilience and sustainability. So those are all the performance measures that Jackie would bring with her.
So I have a question. Last year, when we were discussing Hillman and City Dock, we put $1.5 million and we had it called resiliency. We had a line item for resiliency for $1.5 million. So what I'm hearing now is that we took that $1.5 million out and we're putting it in the city manager's office as a resiliency sort of department. I mean, where does all that money go to this department in the city manager's office? Because that was all for resiliency, one and a half
That
million.
that was 50,000, not 1.5 million, 50,000.
Where did the 1.5 million go? from?
1.5 million was going to be resiliency authority money, but that's not required under the current RFP. So the 50,000 that was actually city money that was put in the budget last year was going to be PAYGO. And so that
Right.
was just moved to operating and is put in the operating budget.
Okay, so that's good to understand. So we just sort of released the 1.5 million, except for the 50. Is that a good way of saying it?
Yeah, I mean, released it,
Yeah.
I guess. It never really existed. It was a placeholder.
It was a placeholder, yeah, because we didn't know how the city document.
Perhaps I could suggest to the committee that tomorrow we do finance and law, and if we have time, I'm getting ready to send the text to Alderman Savage right now saying,
Yeah. should be here.
please see if you can come to the tail end of the we only have finance in the morning tomorrow, I think. Mercifully, only in the morning. Come to the, if you could come to the tail end of the finance meeting. I think we've kind of thrashed this out, though. The dollars will show up in slightly different places, but not in different amounts. And the performance measures will show up in different places. And it will be up to Jackie and Racine to work with City Manager Gerald to see whether those get any refinement. I mean, they were very robust, as David said, and laudable goals and measures. But perhaps we can pick this up at the end of tomorrow morning's meeting. Is that an amenable solution?
Sure.
Sheila, I think, though, that your broader point is definitely on our parking lot for discussion. I think that we really do want to talk about what does it mean to be a deputy city manager. There are many different things that could mean. One meaning of deputy is alter ego, person who would act in the absence of the city manager. I don't think that's what we're creating. I think we're creating something that is something of a finesse position worked out with the mayor and Alderman Savage to make sure that environment has a high position across all departments. And your point is, what about public safety, for example? My view is we have police, fire, and OLP direct report, OEM direct reports to the city manager, so we have a high visibility. But there could be other items. The Office of Community Caring Services could be something that you could argue needs to have a perch up there. I think we're now starting to talk about more staff and more money, but that's what you and I had in mind all along anyway, Sheila. And the question is, does it become an office? Does it become a department? Does it become another deputy city administrator?
Is that still a plan?
This feels like we're reliving last year's effort
Believe
to
me.
organize by way of the budget. Okay, I'm looking at the org chart on page 75, and it's probably not the newest one from the city manager, but under the city manager, along with all the other departments, is resilience and sustainability. Now, I don't know what deal the mayor and Rob have hatched up together, but we're going about it the wrong way. It's a backdoor approach. It failed last year. It may not fail this year, but it might.
Well, I can say at a minimum, it's not nearly as gigantic and pervasive as last year. And I think because of the method we've chosen to do the Finance Committee hearings, using the performance measures as our guideline, we have been able to plow through this. But you're absolutely right. There is a new org chart that was given to us in 2017. And I'm looking at the city manager. It does not show, David, am I correct? It does not show the office of, or the environment position. So this is the one that was redone.
What you're looking at, but
Okay, well, this is, we'll have to get it. This housekeeping stuff is still driving me crazy. But we did get a new reorg chart, which I do think was in response specifically to the point you're raising, Sheila. Let me find the, or you're on page 75?
That's the old org chart, though.
Yeah, it's the
But
old.
this is the one that exists today. Remember, we asked to see not what's being proposed, but what is. And I think that's what we see on the page 75 that was in our
Right.
budget book.
So under the.
I agree that there needs to be a discussion of this clearly, and you know, I'm interested in having that. When I was in San Diego, I was a deputy city manager, so I'm very familiar with those positions, and interested in talking about, you know, what my feelings are about those types of positions.
Yeah, and then that was one of the things that led to your choice of being our city manager. So I think that'll be valuable to have your experience. Tomorrow is for sure finance and law. If we have more time, and particularly if Alderman Savage comes, maybe we can revisit this. Otherwise, we certainly have to schedule time during our deliberations to address this specifically.
Ross, can I just ask a quick question?
Of course.
So are you guys still planning to put forward, I would hope so, the Office of Community Caring is what it was called, because now as we see with the effects of COVID and, you know, just, I mean, we don't know how long this could last. I think that is of really, like, critical importance up there with resiliency as well. But I think of just, you know, having an office in the city able to determine how we respond to the needs of our residents based off of this. I like rental issues are a huge concern, food insecurities, healthcare, just a number of things that I think would fit perfect under what you guys had proposed.
Well, so my answer, and I'll let Sheila have a go at it too, is I still am committed to that concept. I will hasten to add that given the amount of reduction and the increase in appropriations that City Manager Gerald had to offer us to get us to a balanced budget this year, I don't know where we find that money. I'm certainly open to a discussion about where we find that money, but my sense is it has to come out of somebody else's hide. Further, and I lay awake at night worrying about this, I really feel that we have a tsunami of an unknown size that is roaring down on us for next fiscal year and the year or two after that. Those are not times when you become expansive. Those are usually times when really disastrous things. You weren't here, Sheila, Fred, and I were when we had the housing bubble burst and the near bankruptcy for the 2009 city budget, where we were letting staff go and not paying vendors, taking out $100 million, $10 million lines of credit, two of them, two $10 million lines of credit just to pay vendors and salaries. I am anticipating that's next year's environment. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm a worrywart. And I'll be very happy to say, Ross, you're Chicken Little again. The sky is not falling. But unfortunately, I think I'm probably closer to right than not. And so I don't know how you do these things, but you're absolutely right. Your point to one is absolutely correct. That's the time when people without means need that kind of help the most. I mean, that's really, and this is opening up a new social aspect to the role of the city government that I believe in, that I think Sheila will speak for herself, but that's why we brought up the concept to begin with. I have a folder sitting right next to me labeled the Office of Community Caring Services. It's right in the very front of one of my stacks of folders. So I still think about it and believe in it, but I would be less than honest if I said I wonder whether we're going to be able to pull it off in the near term. But Sheila?
I am still all in, Alderman Gay. And I think we can come up with the funding. This is our budget and it should meet our priorities. You know, we have tremendous respect for the departments, absolutely. But we also have a different kind of commitment to the community. And this Office of Community Services or Community Caring Services is going to touch on all of those devastating issues that are beginning right now and will carry into the future, whether it's homes, homelessness, jobs, food, whatever it is. We have no one who can speak to these issues and help. And I think we can start by funding one position, and I feel strongly that it should be a social worker, a certified, trained, professional social worker who can begin to disseminate information for us. And maybe with the police department, we can have a discussion with Chief Jackson to see how he may be able to help, or with Director Simmons, because he did give us some direction before as to where we may be able to get funding for such a position. But I am still very much committed. We haven't had much of discussion around this, but I am, you know, in the back of my mind, it's still there. And I have not given up on the hope that we can take this big step this year, because it's crucial. It's desperately needed right now.
So the way these things work is our 3 jobs are to go find 2 other noses, because 5 votes is what it takes.
That was my next question, yeah.
I stand by my trepidation. It is going to have to come out of somebody else's hide. City Manager Gerald has said to us over and over again that we had to do some trimming for a lot of the departments in order to get to a balanced budget. Finance Director Dickinson has told us the same thing, and the rule has been, and that's why every time when this council never has seen an enhancement that it didn't like, and I haven't either, but we have to be good stewards and prudent. If we're going to talk about spending more someplace, we need to figure out where we find it elsewhere, and wherever we find it, those aren't going to be happy people because they all have their aspirations for enhancements, and I think offered with the best of motives. Every one of our departments wants to do better for the city, and they see the enhancements as the way they can do more for us. So that's a good thing, but we also have to be able to afford it. So anyway, long soapbox-ish answer to your question.
May I just cite one example? If you recall, we were about to lose our deputy office emergency management gentleman. And I was able to get, $120,000 to keep that position a number of years ago, because all the departments saw value in his position and him staying in that position. Well, I think we can make the same argument for this social worker's position. It would benefit all the departments. So I'll work on.
Okay. All right, now we're ready for the Finance Department's presentation.
How about if I move to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you. Again, thank you, everybody. Really hard work, great presentations. Thank you, Jody, Director Gerald. I am personally very pleased with the way our Finance Committee work is going this year. I feel much more comfortable with the way it's going, and I think that's because of the great work all of you are doing to help us, so I appreciate it. We need a vote to, all those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
You.
Aye.
Aye.
David, can we find some